Research designs and classifications of data. Right. Right. There's 5 different research designs. They are longitudinal, which is a type of research, and it implies in the name it's very long, sort of form of research, and normally spans over many years. It's quite an elongated process, and you'll be looking for change and development over time. Another type of research is case study, where you study a group of athletes or maybe a player, and you tend to get like a real in-depth information, and you would be looking to find like the change and development over a period of time. It can be a longer study, and so could be a longitudinal study as well, but it would be more specific to an individual or a group for a case study. Cross-sectional studies. This is where you'd get a sample from a particular population of people. For example, like if you were studying rugby players, you'd get samples of different age groups and and different like rugby games like union or league. You would have like a sample of elite players and non-elite players as well. Comparative. This is where you would be comparing things. So if you were comparing how PE is taught at A level and GCSE. Experimental, which is what we're going to be focusing on right here. This is a very systematic approach, as you try to control all the variables other than the one you will manipulate. Right, experimental research designs. There are 5 repeated measures, when a person will be tested on like the same test of like 1 week and then a few weeks down the line, with all the same conditions, on like a comparison testing. And example could be like a standing ball jump 1 week, and then like 3 weeks later, and then 5 weeks later, and you'd compare the results. So you're looking for a development there, or like taking the standing ball jump and the standing vertical jump and comparing them together, and seeing the relation between the test and the results of like explosivity. Matched pairs. This is similar to independent groups, which I'll explain later, in the way that you do all the same tests. However, it's different because of the people. The people will be from like the same sports or have a thing in common. For example, like if you took 2 basketball teams, you could test them all on their vertical jumps and things, and you would try to best match like people up equally as much as you could. Independent groups. This is where there will be like various different people tested for the same test. So that's how it's kind of similar. For example, like when we did the multi-stage fitness test, this was an example of independent group because we're all different people with different sports, but we were all doing the same test and we were tested on the same test. Like field-based data collection. This is when data is collected, not in the lab, but in like the real world. Data collection could happen anywhere apart from in the lab. Disadvantage of this is you can't control all the variables, making it quite unreliable. For example, if you were testing for a javelin throw, you could throw like in 1 week into the wind, and the next week you could be throwing like out of the wind, and this could affect your results. But an advantage of this is that the data collection method is a lot cheaper than having to like hire out a lab. And so like you wouldn't be paying for loads of equipment, you'd just be using the stuff you've got when you're doing your tests. Laboratory-based data collection. This is when data is collected with specialist equipment in the lab, but not in the real world. So a disadvantage of this is that it may not accurately represent or portray like the actual performance of someone, like in an actual like an Olympic event or whatnot, because the conditions will be completely different. So like if you're on a running machine, this doesn't represent like real road or like grass they would be running on. An advantage though is most of the variables you can like control. For example, if you're sprinting, you'll be able to control the weather conditions, like whether the ground is wet or icy, because you'd be inside. Right, next thing is research sources. Right, primary data collection. This is data that you've collected yourself using tests and other things like this would be both like field and lab data collection because they're both done by you. An advantage of this is that you know it's legitimate work because you've tailor-made it to suit what you're looking for, and it's done by you and not anyone else, reducing like illegitimate results in testing. Disadvantage is that it does cost money. And running tests and gaining results will cost a lot of money and time, and so if you're on a budget, your results could not be as good as if you had money to like just burn and throw away. Secondary data collection is this data that you can use to back up hypotheses and your own results, but it's not your data. If you were testing for thigh girth, you could use your results and search for someone else's results on the web or in books and things like that. An advantage of this is that you can back up results and can help prove hypotheses, but like for example, if your hypothesis was male footballers have bigger thigh girths than female, your results could say they do. Secondary data suggests this as well, backing up your results. The disadvantage is that data could not be like legitimate and therefore would be invalid. For example, if thigh girth tests like the secondary data could suggest something completely different and something wrong, so it wouldn't like help in any way possible, and could just be wrong because whoever tested it could have got the test wrong as well. Right, this is the next slide. Classifications of data. First one is discrete data. This is very simplistic data and is non-numerical. They can be like yes and no answers. So an example of like a question asked to gain data would be like, are you 20 years of age? Yes or no. So you're either 20 or you're not. Nominal data. This type of data can be less informative because it may not explain an answer. Could also be a table type data collection like frequency or like a tally table, and the data there would be nominal. Ordinal data. This gives data in rank order, so the sizes of people's shoes could be used, and they could be ranked from smallest to biggest, but you don't necessarily know what like a score would be or what size shoes it would be. Continuous data is split into two subsections. Continuous data is like numerical, has a numerical value and can have any number of decimal places. And so the first subcategory is interval data, and this is where it's like a scale of equal measurements or intervals. So when the data from like a thermometer is like obtained, this would be like interval data, and but it's not set in an absolute zero, so it can have minus numbers, so like on a thermometer. The next one is ratio data. This is the second subsection. It's where the scale starts at zero and has a set equal like measurements to obtain data. An example of ratio data is one of scales, because they start at zero. You can't have negative numbers, and they go up in like equal amounts. So like each little line on it will be a certain number of kilograms. Right, here we've got a table. So I'm just going to take you around the table. Right, standing broad jump to it. This is ordinal data. As we see, it's presented in rank order. If you see closely, all these numbers. But it doesn't actually say their results, making it like ordinal. Next one's height. This is ratio data, which is a type of continuous data. This is because it's numeric, like it's got a numerical value and decimal points, and it starts at 0. You can't have negative value in that. Also, it doesn't. And it goes up in equal measurements. Right. Smoker or non-smoker. This is discrete data because it's a simplistic answer. So you're either a smoker or you're not, and it's non-numerical. Sit and reach. This is normal data because participants are put into different categories. It doesn't tell like the actual results. It's like less informative because it doesn't give the actual results. It just says average, below average sort of thing. Weight change. This is interval data, which is a type of continuous data. It's because though it goes up in equal measurements and is a numerical value, it does not start at 0. It has negative values. So because like obviously there's negative 8 plus 3, for example, because it can change its development. Sex again is discrete data because it's a simplistic answer because you're either male or you're female. Age is continuous ratio data, as the data is numerical and there are equal intervals between data, and there's an absolute 0 on age, otherwise you wouldn't be alive. Sprint is ratio data, which is continuous data. This data is numerical and has equal intervals it goes up in, so seconds and minutes, and there is an absolute 0 again. Right, next one, qualitative data research. First one's structure. The definition is having a well-defined structure or organisation and being highly organised. Advantages are that it's easy to set up and control, and you can get very simplistic answers. Disadvantages are that it can be too rigid, and you can easily miss out information if you don't ask the right questions. Next one, unstructured. The definition is when questions are not pre-arranged, allowing for spontaneity and for questions to develop during the course of the interview. Advantages are the interview can go anywhere. Non-closed questions can get like more like a conversation and more information. Disadvantages are that the conversation can go a bit off topic, and also there's a lot to write down. Semi-structured. The definition is a method of research used in social science. While structured has a rigorous set of questions, semi-structured interview is open, allowing new ideas to be brought up. The interviewer has a framework of themes to be explored, and advantages are you can adapt your answers to allow the conversation to flow. But disadvantage are that you only get one opinion, and it's not as much as a conversation. Focus groups. The definition is demographically diverse group of people assembled to participate in guided discussion about a particular topic. Advantages are that you can get a general idea of the population and you get a variety of opinions. Disadvantages are that some people could be really shy in groups and not say their feelings or opinions, and also people may not like groups. Next one is notational analysis. So when you study the movements and strategies and tactics from like a team or an individual player, done by creating tables with specific skills in them, and whilst watching them play, like you record what's going on. An advantage of this is that you see people's strengths and weaknesses, and you see if they're improving, and you can see where they need to improve. Disadvantage is hard to see everything in the game. It's quite time consuming and could be demoralising for that particular player.